Hello, everyone. I hope you're not feeling tired. We are coming towards the end of the second day. And we have 2 more sessions to close the second day of Peralta Online Equity Conference. Since yesterday morning, we have been learning, analyzing, discussing, and sharing resources around equity. And hopefully, we hope all these sessions have been inspiring for you. Now we have another presenter, Dr. Rochelle Newton, who will be talking about eliminating FIFO, LIFO, trauma at work. And quick reminders before I pass the microphone to Dr. Newton. Please use the chat box for your questions so that we can share them with our presenter at the end of the session. Also, you can activate the Zoom captioning feature by using the closed caption button at the bottom of your screen. And lastly, don't worry if you missed any sessions yesterday or today, because we're uploading all our videos on our YouTube channel. I'm going to share the link with you in the chat so that you can go ahead and subscribe. So, Dr. Newton, if you are ready, I'm going to share your slides. So you can just let me know when it's time for the next slide.
Before you put any slide up, I want to start by prefacing what we're going to talk about today.
Sure.
So, we've heard a lot about workplace violence. Workplace violence has been around for a very, very long time. We talked a little bit a while ago about people going postal, where someone going to their workplace and shoot up the place because they were either terminated or they didn't like what happened in their workplace. This is not that. What we're talking about is what happens to both employees who are let go or find some kind of hardship at work and those who are affected by what happens to that employee. And through this PowerPoint presentation, we are going to do some, if you will, some role playing. And I'm going to ask you to participate in these role plays with me, and I will ask for volunteers. And so we're going to go through that and we're going to see how that works. So if you will you put my first slide up, please?
Can you see it?
I see something that's not that. I don't know what this is that I see, but that's not my slide. If you cannot, if I can share my screen, I'll put up my slides myself.
Okay, let me try again. Is this?
That's the first screen. So can you go back to the first one again?
Yeah.
So when you think about elimination, can you imagine that word being used to describe something we do to a human? I mean, like, think about elimination. Just think about that word just for a second. Elimination. What do we eliminate? So we might eliminate a type of food. We might say, well, this food is no longer good for consumption. We might eliminate some sort of illness. But can you imagine eliminating a human? But we talk about that all the time in the workplace. This role is no longer needed and the person in it is being eliminated. That sounds pretty harsh. And for those of you who've been around technology for a long time, you might recognize these acronyms, FIFO and LIFO, first in, first out, last in, first out. All three of these things are traumas that happen in the workplace. And they're traumas that are as harmful as being diagnosed with an illness, loss of a limb, loss of a family member, loss of a job, loss of everything. They're traumas. And we don't treat them like traumas in the workplace. We don't put up counseling. We don't arrange for someone to see someone or talk to someone. But these are traumas that happen in the workplace. And when we think about them, we only think about them from one side. We think about them from the person who's been affected by that trauma. So if we eliminate a person's role in the workplace, we only think about that person, but we don't think about the people who are left behind. So let's just say you have a team of 5 and you eliminate one person. You don't think about what the impact of that trauma is on the people who are left behind. And that's also traumatizing for them as well. Next slide, please. And, people say I pick on human resources a lot, but it is almost as classified and as convoluted and as secretive as the CIA, the FBI, and some of those other things. And what happens in human resources is often cloaked in conspiracy and secrecy, almost to the detriment of their employees. If you remember, back in the 70s and 80s, salaries were very secretive because they didn't want employee A to know what employee B was making, because they were afraid if they consulted with each other, they might find those discrepancies in pay. So if you have analyst A that makes $10,000 and analyst B that makes $5,000, and they started talking, analyst B might go to HR and say, hey, how come you aren't paying me the same amount? And pay equity is probably one of the most difficult things to address in the workplace. And it almost inevitably can't be fixed because human resources is so secretive in the way they do things. And in the company culture, human resources is almost always the culprit and why there's so much discrepancy and inequity in the workplace, because of the way HR has created many of their policies and programs to create these inequities. But I'm not going to beat up HR too much in this talk today, but they are the house of secrets. Next slide. And why are they the house of secrets? Pay, we talked about that a little bit, right? So I'll give you an example. In my workplace, in my most recent job, we have these analysts, and in information technology, a lot of times they're banded positions. So, you have a band C, a band D, a band A. Well, they don't talk about band A and band B, but band C, band D, band E, and all these different bands. And in those bands are pay ranges, right? So HR can pay, say, a person that has 5 years of experience in a band C, X dollars, and somebody that has 10 years of experience in band C, this amount of money. And while that might make logical sense, eventually those bands are going to catch up to each other. So the person who was in this job that came in with less experience is going to eventually catch up with their experiences, and that inequity in pay is going to eventually catch those two people out of sorts. And so when the person that had the most experience leaves and the person who eventually catches up, that pay inequity is going to be hard for them to make up over the long term. And I can tell you more about that, but that's not what this talk is about. Promotions. So when you are in a position and you want to go to the next position, what has become the de facto mode of things now, when you move from, let's say you're in band C and you move to band D across the organization, you are going to get that full pay increase when you move to that new job, because you're in the same organization and you're only moving to this one job up. You have to really take a high hop to get that new pay. So pay promotions, annual performance reviews, most secret. We only have this much money and we're only going to give, if we have this much, so only so many people are going to get that 5% increase, or this person's going to get this 3%. It's nonsense. Position reassignments, right? So I'm going to move you over here, but I'm not going to pay you anymore. You're going to either have to take it or leave it. Annual leave and FMLA, another one of those things. And there's so many other things in that suitcase of secrecy that makes workplace violence happen all the time. Next slide, please. This is one of those things. This happened in a place where I worked at. And while this is funny now, but actually this is absolutely ridiculous. Elimination, right? So in a Zoom call, an in-person meeting, or a direct meeting with your manager, each one of these things has the same violence as if someone hit you. It's not going to leave the same mark. and someone hits you, but it leaves a deeper mark because it leaves an impression on you. If someone calls you up and say, hey, I'd like to have a meeting with you, they don't give you any advance notice. You don't know why you're having this meeting. You don't know what you've done wrong. But hey, HR calls and says, hey, I want to have a meeting with you. Strikes fear in your heart, right? HR is calling you. Why is HR calling me? You know, I've done anything wrong. I don't know what's going on. HR calls. 10 minutes. Hey, what's happening? There's that one. HR calls and says, hey, I want to have an in-person meeting with you. Fear. The trauma of just having the call, just to think that you're going to have this discussion with someone about something you have no idea. And to further make that worse. So the first one is a small little bit of trauma because you have time to think about it in your mind, but you're not so concerned about a 10-minute meeting. What could possibly happen in that meeting? An in-person meeting with just you and HR. Okay, that's traumatizing. But an HR meeting with your manager, that's even more traumatizing. And there are no processes in HR to talk to you about what these might do to you or how this might affect you. They're just scheduling these meetings, and HR is supposed to be the safe place, right? It's not safe, especially when your job or your promotion or your pay is at risk, right? It's not a safe place. And although HR likes to pat themselves on the back and think they're the holy grail, they are not. And they need to do a redo. They need to rethink how they're doing things because they're causing as much trauma as anybody else in that office. And we're going to talk about other people who cause trauma in the workplace. But HR is the biggest trauma giving group in the workplace, especially when it comes to position elimination, pay, promotion, any of those things. When you go, your wife or you are about to have a baby and you need time away from the office, you have some illness, you need FMLA, and you've got to go talk to them. It's like doing the tango with someone who doesn't know how to do the tango because there's a negotiation about the FM. So the law grants you FMLA for medical issues, but it's not clear cut because you've got to go do this dance with them, and they're going to tell you what the law says, and then they're going to, give you these little hints about what it might mean to your job, and things like that. And although the law is clear about what FMLA and medical leave says, HR always tries to make you feel like there's some risk or harm to you if you take too much or if you need more, whatever it is. Next slide, please. First in, first out. So here's where we need this role play. So can I get some volunteers to be Charlotte or Steven? So it could be a boy or a girl. Can I get a volunteer? You can just raise your hand or say something in the chat if you want to, and our moderator can say who's going to be our volunteer.
Maureen just raised her hand.
Thank you, Maureen. Maureen, thank you so much for that. So let's go through this. So Maureen, you have just been hired as a help desk analyst back in March. This is great, right? You love your job. You have been doing it great. You've come in, you have made a difference, right?
Yep.
So what do you like about your job, Maureen? How do you fit in with this group? What are you getting out of this job?
Helping people.
Right. And you like your work, right?
I do indeed.
And you fit in with the team?
I do. We all get along very well.
Right. And you have contributed to the team. You made improvements to what they're doing?
I have. I've been helping them track the problems that they've been solving.
Excellent. And we love you. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Excellent. About 3 or 4 months into your job, Maureen, your supervisor calls you into the office and they say, Maureen, we're glad you're here. We really appreciate what you're doing, but we just don't think you're the right fit for what we're trying to do.
I'm shocked.
How do you react to that? What are you thinking?
What did I do wrong? How can they say that? It's working out so well.
Right. You fit in with the team, you've contributed, you've actually been a part of the team. You feel like you belong here, right?
And I bring donuts on Friday.
Exactly. the people who you help, they really appreciate you. You know, they've written nice things about you. So what's going on here?
That's what I want to know. What happened? Did somebody say something? Did I do something wrong?
There have been no negative comments. Your coworkers like you. So what happened?
Well, that's what I need to know so that I can improve. Can you tell me so that maybe, I can work on whatever my deficiencies are?
I'm afraid not, Marina. I'm afraid we just have to let you go. It just hasn't worked out for us. We really appreciate you, but I just don't think you're the right fit for us.
But I need more information. I need to know why exactly, since everything else had been so positive.
I'm afraid we just cannot, Maureen. We just really cannot. We just don't think you're the right fit for us and what we're trying to do as we move forward. We really appreciate you, and we hope you find a better spot for you. But thank you.
What did somebody complain? I don't know. I don't know what's going on that I can't keep this job.
Nothing. There have been no complaints. Your work has been very, very good. We really appreciate what you've done. You have made some improvements and given us some good ideas on how to do better. It's just, we don't think you're a good fit for what we're doing right now.
Are you
Thank
going to
you.
be hiring somebody else? Is somebody's cousin going to come into my job?
I just don't think we can say anymore, but thank you for your time, Maureen. Good luck.
Well, thank you for nothing. Can I have a letter of recommendation?
Unfortunately, we cannot. And those kinds of things happen every single day. And
Yeah.
I'm the HR manager that's talking to Maureen. So, and they're closed mouth. They don't give you any idea. They just basically say thank you and tell you to have a nice day. That happens in HR every single day. And Maureen, can you tell me, if that had happened to you in real life, how do you think you would have handled what you felt about that? So you had been in this job, maybe let's just say 3 or 4 months, you felt like you were contributing. How do you think that would have made you feel for your next job? Or how do you think you would have assessed what you have done and how you felt being asked to leave?
Actually, it did happen to me when I was very young. And we found out after the fact that it was a sort of a scam to boost hiring ratings for a computer school that I'd gone to, that all the graduates would be hired by this one group, and then they would keep, well, during that time, this this was a long time ago, they would keep the veterans, because of course they had veteran preference, but anyone else they let go, and with no notice, and then they would recycle and do the same thing every 6 months. And it hurts. It's sort of like you put all your time and effort into something. And I wasn't, someone tried to do that to me now, I'd say fine, whatever. But back then I didn't even know what to say.
Right.
It really hurts, hurts your confidence.
It does, but I think it also hurts your sense of who you are,
Yeah.
especially, it's one thing if you were a slacker, you come in, you really don't care, you just biding time, it's just a paycheck. But when you really, like, this person was really a go-getter, this person was giving it their all. They were really working, they were getting along, like you said, they were bringing donuts on Friday. I mean, they were a part of the team, and to be let go, and if I remember correctly, the reason why this person was let go was because they thought that they were bringing too much friendliness, if you will, to the team. People were more people were going to this person for help versus their other team members. And they felt like that was creating too much of a climate of, I don't know what the right word was.
Too much positivity.
Maybe that's what it was. But I think what they were saying was they felt like they were making it too friendly or something, and they wanted it to be more buttoned down, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
This was a few years ago, but and the dates of these are not accurate, but that's what, if I remember correctly, they felt like they were making it too friendly. If I don't remember exactly, but something like that.
Wow.
Okay, let's move on to our next. Can I get a volunteer to be Abby or Michael? anyone, don't be shy.
Maureen did a great job. So I think everyone is just like, should I go next after her? Right?
I was just going to say, don't be afraid. It's time to be your inner actor or actress.
The idea is just to understand how traumatizing this can be, to go in there and do your best and have someone wake up one morning and decide that you are not a valid member of the team. And if you look at these scenarios, these are legitimate scenarios that I was a part of, that these things actually happen. And what's really interesting about them is the choice of names. These are not the names of the people who were there, but Charlotte was a woman, and she was a young woman, and she was very friendly. She was trying to find a job where she could fit in and belong. And this was not a help desk. This was a woman who was working as a medical transcriptionist. And she was really, really a go-getter. She learned how to type. She's really, really doing the best she can. She did better than many of the other people who was doing it, but she was being very friendly with the doctors. And so that's why she was asked to leave. In the case of Abby and Michael, in the interest of this was a case where, this guy had been working and working and working, and he did everything he could to do terrible work, and he was promoted. And people around him who was doing horrible, horrible work was not. And it's an example. And in this case, the guy was a white guy, and he was the nephew of the guy who owned the company. And the guy who was let go, who was doing very good work, was Black. And it is an example of when you come into an organization, when you do good work, it doesn't always mean you're going to get the job. It means there's a good chance you're going to be out. And in the case of John, these are two girls, and John and Jaden. Jaden, the girl in this case, was a Latinx young woman. She was an amazing nurse, and she traveled. And everywhere she went, she was in high demand. Now, think about that. A nurse in the middle of COVID, let go. And it's just amazing to me how age, race, gender are all qualifiers to be first in and first out, regardless of where you are good or not. And when we think about this in the days of equity, and I just want to pause in this to say something. So we saw in Florida where that governor has banned critical race thinking theory, has banned a lot of things about DEI, and DEI is on the chopping block. But we need to have people think long and hard about how we see age, race, gender, sexual orientation, because although people want to put these things on the chopping block, a society cannot exist unless we recognize all people, all types, all kinds, all ages, all everything. I have aged out of information technology. My salary when I left information technology in 2021 was $218,000 a year. Do you know how many people would pay me $218,000 a year right now? It's zero. Even though I am sought out, I can't say almost every single day somebody gets in trouble, they go dark, they have a problem, they can't call me. Don't call me unless you're going to pay me. Stop calling me. I do not wish to be called. I don't want to be anybody's advice. Don't consult me. I don't want to know anything. This work I'm doing right here with Peralta and equity is the only work I'll do for free. I don't do anything else for free because it's the only work that still matters in our society. Because if we cannot see each other, our age, our race, our gender, our sexual orientation, our religion, we might as well just fold it up and go home, because people matter. People matter. Next slide, please. I'm off my soapbox now, so you can start fussing at me. Okay, here's my next one. I still need volunteers. Can I get some volunteers to be Keisha, Olivia, Chris, Charles, Diamond? These are better. These are much better ones. Say, come on now, can I get some more volunteers, please? This one is great. The restaurant one is really, really great. This one is a Waffle House. This is great.
Sign me up.
Okay, great. Let's go. So Keisha or Olivia, whichever one you wish to be, is at a restaurant. She is doing great work. She has turned the restaurant. They increased their rating points. The food on the menu is good. The people in the restaurant are fighting all the time. They don't have to call the police. Any of you been to Waffle House? You know how Waffle House are? Especially if you go late at night. She cleaned the Waffle House up. The Waffle House, she cleaned it out. Guess what? Come on now, tell me, come on, talk to me about you at the Waffle House. Tell me what's happening at the Waffle House. What are you doing?
Well, first and foremost, I'm excited that we created a sense of team spirit where everybody is working together. When somebody can't cover their shift because they have another responsibility, their child gets sick, someone is always there to hop in. And I feel like I had a large part in building that culture of shared responsibility and all doing it for the better of Waffle House. We are proud to be workers at this organization.
That's wonderful. And you got better food on your menu, right?
Oh, we have the best Waffle House in the state. There's no doubt about it.
Absolutely. And you got new points. You went from, I think they were like a 91 to a 96. I mean, you did great work.
All in 2 months.
In 2 months. And what happened?
They let me go.
Why?
I have no idea. They couldn't tell me.
That's crazy.
That's what I said.
And so all of a sudden the restaurant is doing better than they had to. And guess what happened after they let you go?
I have no idea, and I'm not sure I want to know.
They went back from, they were no longer a 91. They went to an 87. They actually had to close the restaurant for, I think they closed for 2 or 3 months because it was in a prime location.
Woof. Well, I'm not going back to help them out again.
Well, believe it or not, I think they did say that they tried to call the person back. But so how did you feel when they called you in and said that they had to let you go after you had been there 2 months and did all that work you did?
I felt like they didn't respect me. I felt like they didn't really care about the work. It was all about money. I think I could go on forever.
Right. So, but in those instances where someone has come in and made a profound change to make a place better, what do you think that does to the psyche of the person who has put that much effort and energy into making a place better, only to find out that that work was not valued?
Devastating.
Right. And in my mind, it's not something you could just take a pill or take a nap and you're better overnight. I don't think it's that simple. You know, that's why I think it's trauma. I don't think you can just say, oh, well, I'll go get another job tomorrow, because the work that that person put into making that Waffle House, I mean, think about what she had to do that, right? I mean, like she had to go in and clean up the restaurant, you know, hire new staff, get people on board, you know, that's a lot of work to do that.
3 shifts? Are you kidding me?
Right. And to have someone say that didn't matter. You know, people talk about mental health in the world, it's because things like this. And to me, I think that human resources, the way we see human resources, we always think of human resources as the end all be all. But to me, human resources really does need a redo, because they're not thinking about the impact of what their actions are on the people they're doing this to. And think about the staff she left behind. So think about what the staff that she built had a culture of being on time, cooking good food, keeping the restaurant clean, understanding how they can work together, you know, to cover each other's shift. And then she left. So it's two sides, right? It's what it did to her and what it did to the people she left behind. And what I want people to think about when they're thinking about these traumas that take place in the workplace is think about it as a duality, right? It's not just what happens to the person who's impacted immediately, what happens to the people who are left behind, and thinking about how do we create counseling and culture that allows people to know, what do I do when this happens to me? Who do I go to? Who can I call? And in the case of the woman in the Waffle House, I will tell you, this has a very good story. She opened her own restaurant.
Hmm.
And she's doing well. She's, COVID, threw her for a little loop, but she's doing well. She's doing well. And sometimes you need to learn how to fall down so you can get back up. But we also need to put things in place so people can get back up. Because a lot of times people don't get up. It's why there's higher instances of suicide in our culture, severe depression, because people don't know what to do when they have these instances that happen. And HR is sitting back with their legs crossed and, celebrating that they reduced their, and I think you all know this, the highest cost in any organization is staff, paying their staff. That's the highest cost in any organization, is paying staff, because not only do you have the salaries, but you have their benefits, you have all of those other things. So it is a big bump in their budget, but that also shouldn't be such that they can celebrate, well, we've gotten rid of one person, I feel better about myself. You ought to think about what the impact of that is. Okay, so Charles and Chris. So this is one of those things where I think that this guy did hurt himself. He didn't die, but he did hurt himself, and I think this is what made me, when I first did this presentation, I did this presentation about 3 years ago, and it was what drove me to do this, because I knew him and I knew him well, and he felt like he had done so much good and that people didn't see any value. He didn't see any value in himself because they didn't see any value in him. And I think that when we think about ourselves and we assume our value is in our work and not in ourselves, and a lot of people do that. They see value in what they do, their work, what they go and do, as opposed to seeing the value in themselves. And in this case, his supervisor was jealous of his success. That's terrible. That's absolutely terrible. And a lot of times that's happening. Companies hire people and put them in leadership roles that are not leaders. And because they're able to create things and are productive, that doesn't mean they're a good leader. Just because they're in a leadership role or a manager, that doesn't make them a good manager. Caring for people should be the primary job that we do as a leader, not caring for results and end results, because yes, that's important, but if you care for your people, you should get good end results. Okay, I'm over that. Okay, Diamond and Grace, this was a very good story. Diamond and Grace was a really, really good story. She was a great car mechanic and she did really well. She did not take this personal. She went and worked for another car mechanic company and she did well. But all this workplace trauma. Next slide, please. So every day we experience a trauma. And I want to ask you a question. So when you think about trauma in the workplace, just say, for example, someone says to you, I didn't like what you said about the way I handled this project. You think that's an example of trauma in the workplace? I can't see your comments or anything, but that's an example of trauma in the workplace. And they can be small little things, small little examples. And how we handle those traumas determines how well we are mentally. And our mental health is as valuable as any other thing that we have, because, and I'll tell you a little small story. So in 2022, I had a life-altering health event. They had to revive me 3 times. The doctor said it was stress. How you handle the occurrences of trauma in your life may affect your life. You don't have to be hit. You don't have to be run over. You don't have to be, I don't know what all the things are, but trauma happens to us every day. The person on the highway cuts you off. How you respond to that trauma is how successful you are at navigating your life. You cannot allow trauma to just happen and you swallow it down. You have to regurgitate it and get it out. You can't allow it to happen to you. So in the workplace, if during your performance review, you're sitting in your performance review with your manager, and I'll give you a typical performance review. So let's just say you have a performance review with your manager, and typical, in my experience, typical performance review, they ask you about all the things you've done in the past 6 months or year, depending on how you come in and you write your list of things list of things you've done successfully and not so successfully or whatever, and you go through there, and then they'll tell you what they think about that, and then they'll talk to you about how much you possibly are getting in your increase. And the fluff of that is just absolutely ridiculous, right? So truth. So every year when you do the budgets, there's this part where they tell you how much you can give your employees in the performance review, right? And so you get this rubric of percentage. So let's just say if you got 35 employees, and that percentage is you can give of that, you can give some percentage of that money to all your percent. You have to figure out how many of them you're going to give 5%, i.e. how many of them are excellent, how many of them were not, and how many of them not getting a percentage, right? So you've got employees who every year are exception, right? You can't give them that 5% every year, right? Why not? Well, because you got to give some of those other ones that were not exceptional 5% or some percentage of 5%. That's, forgive my French, bull crappy. It's bull crappy, because somehow or another, you've got to figure out how to navigate some percentage of money for people that will make them somewhat okay. But they already know they're getting shafted from the start, right? Because the people who are so exceptional are now going to know, oh, I might get 1%, or I might get 3%, or I might get 2% when they deserve 5%. The people down here who were crappy are going to get some percent when they should get none. All of that's a traumatic conversation for the manager. It's traumatic for the employees. It's traumatic for everybody. HR needs to fix that process. Either give you enough money so you can give everybody who deserves 5%, or tell the managers, you have a right to tell those employees who have not deserved to get 5% or whatever it is, what they can get. Create a policy that says, here's how it is. Okay, my next thing. Coworker violence. We do not get to choose who we work with. We just are thrown into a pot and you get to work with. Managers and HR and organizational policy needs to create a culture where employees can learn to work together and get along. One of my favorite things to do, how many of you are familiar with the game called Apples to Apples? Whatever it is, find a way to make work fun as often as you can. Play games, sing songs, dance, do things that are fun. And I know we all are working remotely, but you can do all those same things remotely. You can take time out of your day and play games. You take time out of your games, and I cannot sing a lick. I cannot dance. I have no rhythm. I have nothing. But do things that make work fun. That allows your team to bond. And then that allows you to have uncomfortable conversations that do not break the team and allow you to have conversations where there is not so much workplace coworker violence, i.e., I did not like the way you handled that project, becomes less of an uncomfortable conversation because now you have bonded. You have seen me dance poorly, and you know now that I cannot dance, so you can have a conversation. Rochelle, I've seen you dance. I know you cannot dance, so I can tell you that you did not handle that well, and it won't break our relationship. It won't be violent. You know, I can talk to you in a way that we are now comfortable with each other. If the culture does not allow us to have those kind of relationships, we need to find ways where we can have those. Organizational policies need to be such that there are times where the organization reviews those policies and say, hey, this is not working. We need to rethink this. This is not working. The culture needs to be such that we are not thinking about things from a top-down black and white way, but a way that is inclusive of all of us. We need to belong to each other. And that means, all of you all people who think it all that crazy stuff, stop that. I'm not talking about race. I'm not talking about sexual orientation. I'm talking about belong to each other in the workplace. In other words, if we are working on a security problem, that problem belongs to all of us. It's not my security problem. It's our security problem. If we're working on a problem on how to get word to fix something, it's our problem. Creating a culture where it's not silos, but we reach across the aisle and we embrace each other for the work, and that we don't create an environment where we are traumatizing each other. I have a friend at work. Well, I don't work there anymore, but I have a friend at work. He is white and he is my little brother. I love him just like my little brother. And it's because I reach across the aisle all the time. I do not believe in separating people by such arbitrary things like race and age and things that do not matter, because you look at me, I am Black, I am female, I have an afro. When I die, I will have none of these things. All I have is a brain. And that's what makes me who I am, is my brain, not these things that you can see. And that's how we should see each other, is by things that matter, not things that do not matter. I used to have long, straight hair. I got sick and it all fell out. I used to be bald. In November 2022, this is how I grew back. I love it. I have a little white boy that lives in my neighborhood, always to come around, touch my afro. I let him come touch my afro anytime he wants to. It does not matter the physical things. It matters the intangible things that we are able to do with each other. So I ask you to consider workplace violence as a thing that we can eradicate in our lifetime, that we remove workplace violence as we can. And I ask HR managers to rethink this. My last slide. Thank you. Time ready for questions.
Am I still sharing my screen?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Dr. Newton, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean, that was a very engaging session. We all enjoyed, I'm sure, in the room. Everyone in the room enjoyed it so much. And also, thank you for reminding us. It was kind of like thought-provoking thing to process for me as well. Like, employees experience trauma at work every day. I thought about it, like how, why? And I think we need to sleep on it and think about it more, because you mentioned like it can be from coworkers, you know, because of HR, because of so many different things. Do we experience trauma every day at work, which is important thing for us to think about. Thank you very much. I'm looking at the chat, and also I'm looking at the audience to see if they have any questions.
Yes, one question I have is, what can we do to counter the trauma? That idea of dancing and singing and creating an environment that's community oriented. What are things we can do to maybe not stop it, because we can't control HR, we can't control our coworkers, but how can we balance it out with positive acts?
I think a part of it is understanding that we are human, right? I mean, what you said, we cannot stop it. It happens all the time. I mean, like somebody walks by you and might make a comment or say something that might hurt your feelings. I mean, like it doesn't always come from HR or from our managers. It comes from all different directions. I think the point is accepting that people are human, practicing the art of forgiveness, and being patient with each other, I mean, like, but also being able to ask, I'll give you an example. People ask me to do a lot of diversity work for them. And I had an experience where a bunch of nurses were fighting with each other about the smell of food. And I think you approach it from the standpoint of finding what are the commonalities between people, right? So this was an instance where one group had food that was very poignant, smelled very, very strong smell. And the other group took offense at that. So I ask you, how do you address that, right? And so bring both groups together, instead of addressing what the issue is, finding what you have in common. And my answer was Billy Idol. Best answer to any problem is bring Billy Idol to the room, and that offended both of them tremendously. And once you bring something that breaks the ice, everybody has something to be mad about. And they were mad at me, and that worked perfectly, so they started talking about that, and the problem went away immediately, And anytime you can find something where people can have something in common, it almost always solves the problem. If you are mad, let's just say I said, I don't like, both of you had on gray shirts. So let's just say I don't like gray shirts. And you, oh, hell, we don't like black shirts. You have a black shirt. As soon as you can find something that you have in common, it almost always breaks the problem down. And that's how I almost always start, is what's in common and how do I solve that? So that's why I say, when we have group meetings, I almost always start by playing a game, and I invented this new word. Can I share my new word? Revember. REVEMBR. It's political, so I won't tell you what it means, but remember. And so everybody, I tell this word to, gets mad with me about it. I'm like, okay, you can get over it. I don't care, but it is a point to solve a problem, so you can be mad with me instead of mad at each other. I would rather you be mad with me than be mad with each other, because everybody loves me, it's easier to be mad with me than to be mad with each other. So I love that.
Wow.
I saw you looking it up. What does it mean? What does it mean? I saw you looking it up. What does it mean?
Remember November.
No, it's not exactly that, but close. Remember Roe v. Wade? All of the things that went wrong. Remember January 6th? Remember.
In November.
Remember.
I love it.
Remember.
And Dr. Newton, we have a question in the chat from Glenn. How can we be subtly assist our coworkers with trauma they might be experiencing? Great question.
Say it one more time.
How can we subtly assist our coworkers with trauma they might be experiencing? How can we support them?
That's a very good question. And I think my question to that is, how would you know? Will they tell you? How do you know? Because sometimes it might be evasive to confront them or to go to them. They might not want you to know. But if they invite you or if they let you know, I would encourage you to support them and to be there for them. I'll give you a short example. One of my coworkers is a LGBTQIA person, and they had another coworker confront them about dress, and they did not want support at that moment. But later on, they came back and they did it. And I think you just have to wait until you see an opportunity or they ask, because sometimes it can be, they may not want to be, have anything, like that. You just have to wait and see. But if the person does indicate that they want, start with going for a walk or having a coffee, or and if it's in Zoom or something like that, do a separate Zoom session and then ask, can we go have coffee or something like that? Can you meet or something like that? I always try to approach everything from the place of empathy. What can I do for you? How can I help you? I don't understand what you're going through, but I am here. If I can help you, please. How can I help? What can I do for you? But in the event, one of the things I am advocating for is eliminating the word elimination when you use it to refer to a person. How can you eliminate a person? Isn't that like a crime? To eliminate a person? I mean, like, it's such a harsh word. If you're removing a person from a role, you can, there are better words to use to describe that. It's a position that you no longer need. Find a better word to use. That's a harsh word, and to tell that person, well, we're eliminating your role. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. To me, that's cool. That's hurtful. And I think that person needs some counseling. And I think that people that are left behind needs counseling. What do you do to the team that you just broke up? And I mean, like, rarely. I'm sure you eliminate the president. That's not a bad idea. Eliminate the president of the company. Get rid of him. That's a good role to eliminate. Start there.
Okay.
Thank you all for allowing me to do this. Every year, I always have fun when you guys invite me. Thank you. I appreciate this very much.
The pleasure is ours, Dr. Newton. It's always great having you in our conference, and thank you so much for always presenting wonderful ideas and making your sessions engaging. Thank you so much. And also, I would like to thank Kevin and Maureen for taking active roles in this presentation. Thank you all. And Maureen, please don't forget to put your resume that you're bringing donuts on Fridays. I'm sure it's
Okay,
good.
Wait, I get some too. Can you send them virtually?
I'll do it's the only way I can do it. Perfect. Yes.
I love it.
Thank
Duck
you.
donuts, of course.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone again for being here. So our next session will start in only 6 minutes. So maybe you can use this time for stretching. Next session is, can AI be your equity coach? So we're going to start at 3. See you then.
Thank you all. You all have a great rest of your day. Be well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Newton. Bye-bye.
And no trauma in the workplace.